I think that there's the pros and cons. I think that there's a family system and family dynamic that happens with first responders that instilling resiliency, which we've talked greatly about within your kids, right? Like, is what continues to, even in the midst of sometimes chaos, because every family has the right to chaos,
Right.
instilling that resiliency and instilling that if we're a good first responder, right, we know that we're instilling these proper values of
Mhm.
respect and integrity and all these things. And I think that's where that system comes into play because everybody in that household pretty much upholds that,
Yeah.
right? And so then you go into this world when you are a child and that's all you know. I still think that there are moments where I look at other people who didn't grow up in a first responder family and I literally, like, my brain can't comprehend how their brain
Right.
doesn't think the way that I do, like, doesn't see it
Mhm.
in different, like, the ways that I do, but I have to remember that that emotional intelligence isn't there at that extent of because they didn't have to have that because it was instilled in us at a young age to think differently, to think more critically, to be aware of our surroundings.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ashlee.
And here we are, and it's just us today. We don't get to say special guest
Yeah,
like we
which
usually
again,
do.
if people are following along and have this game, I don't know. Who am I to say? Like, sorry, you're missing out. Although you said it. You
We
said
did.
it. So
Yes,
maybe
yes,
it
we did.
counts. But they're really, I feel like we've hit it really big with some of these guests lately.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm just so thankful.
Agree. I mean, I hope that we always come across with such gratitude for our guests that give their most valuable thing, right, that we have is time, and they are willing to share and give it to us. And I know our last episode was one that we were really excited about having, specifically someone to talk more about like the finances of things and how that can be impactful for families or first responders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it's just been such a big theme. So clinically speaking, it's a big theme for me. I don't know if you feel the same way, Jennifer. And then just again, when we're talking about being a child of a first responder and I don't know, all encompassing for real, right? Like his
Very
episode
much
to
so.
me was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that finances do show up when people have stress and high stress things and situations, and finances can absolutely be a part of that. And so I think we always feel better when we have a plan, even if it is we don't have a cent, at least we can have a plan to maybe get two nickels. That can make us feel a little less stressed. So I
And what
appreciate
I
that.
love about us, right, is being able to talk about these things and then we do this back end work of like, how can we find somebody to connect it?
Right,
You
right.
know, and I hope that our listeners are like, yes, we need more connections, tools, resources, because I know that's big for us. We don't want people to feel like we're just on here talking. We want to actually provide some helpful things.
I totally agree with that, and that's a great point, as well as I'm not the finance expert. We should not take
Yeah,
financial
no,
advice from me.
not
I'm
from
not
me.
the financial counselor.
Not from me either. Not
Yeah.
from there. I love that.
I I did see a meme that said, "I'm the number 1 bread loser in my family," and I've never related to something so much. So,
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is so funny. I mean, I feel that way every time I pay for my Bear season tickets. That's for sure. I'm like, ooh, when is my husband gonna be done with this? 'Cause, oops,
Well,
okay.
it is almost there, like, it's fair season,
Girl,
like,
Sunday.
yeah,
When this airs, it'll already
will
pass, but we will
officially
have
be.
a one game under our belt preseason.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so excited for you that it's finally the most magical time of year for you, football
So I
season.
have to put this out there because it was so funny. I looked at my husband and I said, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm coming back to life when football starts again and fall." And it makes my heart so happy. Like I'm coming back to life. And he stops in the car and he looks at me and he goes, "Can I just share how weird that sounds when literally everything's dying?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, like why you gotta come at me like this? Like what? Like," and then I thought to myself, I was a little proud that he came at me like that because that's something my dad would do. That is something he learned specifically from Craig Neeft. And so I always will look at him sometimes when he finally has this edge because he's not from a first responders family, right?
Right,
So our tough joking, like our like hard love was very new to him.
right.
And so like sometimes when he does those things and I'll respond a little attitudey or something to give it back. But in my head I'm like, "Oh, Look who's learning.
Oh, that's how you have to survive. That's how you
Uh-huh.
have to survive
Or
for
I'll
sure.
flat out look at him and be like, "Okay, Craig Neeft, like,
Yeah.
that was a him thing." Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that's so I had to share that because it was just so funny. But I think talking back to the finances and the people we've had on here, and wanting in so many ways for us to help, right? Help our listeners, help the people that we do serve. I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit, Jennifer, because we haven't talked much about this and it kind of feeds into how we got to where we got is like, what was your path? What made you kind of pick this? One, your career in general, but then obviously a little, we know why you went into first responder world, but how does that evolve for you?
Well, that's a great question. And it's interesting. I wanted to ask you this question first, but I guess I'll go
Oh,
first.
oh,
No,
oh,
no, no,
well,
you're good. You're good. I'm just like the wheels are, and it was so long ago since I got out of college, which is crazy. It's funny how those things work out, though. I went to school and I was like, I'm gonna be a dentist. Talk about just like pulling something out of a bag. Like, I don't know why I
I
thought
thought you
that
were gonna
was
say
gonna
pulling
be.
teeth, but you know.
I really missed an opportunity there, didn't I? So I remember taking some science courses and like, yeah, this ain't for me. And, I had like prerequisites that you had to have. And I took a sociology class and I enjoyed it. I really liked the sociology professor that I had. He was great and enjoyed the class. Then I don't know how, but I ended up in like a psych 101 class. Shout out to Dr. Osborne. And I sat in that class and it was really like, this is going to sound so hokey and like weird, but it was really like one of those like real life like light bulb moments of like, oh no, this is it. And just felt like this is and what it stood for me. I enjoy helping people. Like that is something I care about. And sociology overwhelmed me. Like I can't save the world, but I could save,
Yes.
well, I couldn't say, but you can sit with one person and like see the change as like an individual. And so I think that's what really appealed to me. And then, that was like my freshman year. This was my second semester, my freshman year of college. And then I still had to go, like, I remember I changed to education and I was like, well, I really like art. And like, I took some art classes, like, basically denying what had happened in terms of that. And I was like, no, it's really psychology and stuff. And so I graduated with that and found out really quickly with the psych degree, I could be like a barista or work at a bank or, there's just not too
Yeah.
much you can do without like a furthering your degree. And I had an opportunity and worked at a home for girls. I don't think you call it that anymore. And it was helpful and really eye-opening. And you're kind of seeing outside of the margin children who have been in really horrific situations. And that really kind of led for me to like pursue a master's degree to find like a deeper way in like helping those kids. And so that's kind of where it started for me. And so I do want us to have like the sociology, psychology debate on this podcast as well. So walk me through, my wonderful social worker, what your path was in terms of becoming a mental health professional, especially your doctor's
Yeah.
degree.
Oof. Yeah. So I say oof. Is that a bad reaction? I'm like, ooh. So I honestly, like, funny enough, like right when you said that, because we've never really talked about this, like the same thing sort of happened for me. I remember sitting in my sociology class and I liked
Oh,
it, but I was like, oh, like this is a lot. Looking at
right.
things as a whole like that, looking how about how groups interacted and things like that. I was like, I like it, but this isn't like a love. And honestly, my story is a little deep in that, my parents were, I was older when my parents started to get divorced. Like I was a teen, and it wasn't, I've shared on here before, like a very pretty thing. It wasn't a very good time in everyone's lives when that happened. But then my stepmom came into play, and she's a social worker.
Okay.
And I started taking psychology courses at NIU. And again, I can't remember. You're real good with names. I can't remember my one professor's name. Oh, this just came way full circle for everybody on this podcast. But it was one of my very first psych classes. And he brought up Brandon Marshall, who at the time was playing on the Bears.
Oh,
And the minute anybody makes a connection like that for
right.
me, I'm sold. You don't
You're wide
really
awake.
need, yeah, you
I
don't really need
love
much.
I love that you don't remember the professor's name, but
No,
remember the football player's
a
name.
hundred
That's
percent. That's how I
hilarious.
live my life. It's really bad. It's really bad. And anytime someone starts to talk to me football language or something, like I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, like I
Oh,
get it. It's bad. But he actually started talking about him and then just fed into like talking about like the DSM and all these different things, right? And just equating it back to people. And I remember being like, this is so cool. And like talking about how even professional athletes can struggle or like how this works in terms of the brain and what the brain can go through. And I felt so fascinated by that I was like, okay, I think I'm in the right spot. I
Mhm.
really wanted to go for marine biology. I'm going to be honest, and learned quickly that math isn't my thing. But still, it honestly for me, like that caught my attention. I kept going, but as I was going through that, there was just so much happening at home as well. And thankfully at that time I was a little bit older, but one thing that never kind of wavered in my life was my stepmom and her ability to stay so neutral
Oh, wow.
in chaos, I
Yeah.
guess is the best way to put it. Yeah, like 1000%. Like, was never negative, never said anything negative, never inserted herself in a way that, like just the most patience and grace I've ever met in a human. And I remember being like, thank God,
Right,
like,
right.
we have this sounding board when everything else isn't so well. And I think that just inspired me to go further with
That's
social work.
really kind of her in so many ways. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. It's a little tough to talk about out loud, but it is. I mean, I would tell her that, but it is true. Like, it was a very, hard time in our lives. And with my parents, like, it just wasn't good. And so to have like an adult there that was sound of mind, that understood that, like, you're impacting a system here, a family system,
Mm.
I don't know, it just really meant a lot to me in that time, a crucial time in my life. And so I went on to social work because of that. I definitely looked into, she does school social work. So I definitely thought at first, like maybe following in those steps and doing things. And then actually decided at first to do gerontology. I love that population, but then it was, and I know I've shared this before, it was that realization when life happened in the world and the civil unrest started to unfold. And it was my first time being kind of like smacked in the face with reality, I'm going to be honest, of
Mhm.
life and my dad's job and feeling so anxious and nervous for him that I started to find this like such a big passion of like, well, how do I help and how do I make change with first responders? And then from there, it just kept going. My doctorate's degree, well, actually, maybe not everybody knows the story.
I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, forgive me, Dad. So, my doctorate's degree, 99% of it was for myself. 1% of it was definitely probably throw my middle finger in the air and tell my dad to go pound sand in life. Because,
Uh-huh.
and maybe this is something me and my dad need to talk about on our next episode. I know people have wanted him to come back on, but there was a time in life that I went to a different school and I decided to come home. I didn't like it there, and fear took over for my dad. And we've talked about this with
Yeah.
first responders. When they are so fearful, a lot of them act out in anger because instead of being vulnerable and saying what's really having them feel their feels,
Right.
he definitely acted out in anger and he said some really hard things to me. One being that I wouldn't make it anywhere in life, right? That I wouldn't succeed and that I was going to amount to nothing. I'm pretty sure is what he said. And while now I know that that came from a place of fear, that doctorate's degree was really to tell him to shove it, like
Right.
as
Right.
well. And now if he hears this and or he tells that story, which he does, he will cry instantly. Sorry, I'm just really letting it out
Yeah.
on you, Dad. Because right, like in his heart of hearts, he would have never wanted to say that to me.
Right.
But he also just didn't know how to handle the situation at that time.
Right.
And was trying to get me to stay. So if I'm fearful of coming home, I'm going to stay and then I'm going to realize everything's okay.
Right.
Also, don't forget you create your children. I've said that before. So I'm just like him and I'm just as stubborn. So my ass came home anyway, y'all. Like,
Right. Right. That doesn't change it for me. Yeah.
no. And
Yeah.
so I mean, more or less, I did want to go for myself. I wanted to learn new theories, new ways to help. How can I better help certain populations. How can I put my research into first responders? But there's still that 1% that, I'm be honest, that was a proving point.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your honesty and like letting us in a little bit of that family system, that family dynamic. Family systems is a word that mental health professional use just to describe a family and its function. So,
Yeah.
in case people don't know that for sure, using this word family system. What though in like your doctorate degree, do you feel like you really took away? Like what was the next level in this path with sociology that was really helpful, especially because you're so focused in the first responder world?
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that because I think that degree is so much different than, obviously we think of it one way, we go through it and it's completely different. For me, we were super, super like theories based. So it
Mhm.
was very helpful for me to start connecting kind of why, as a society, as a world, right? Like why we do the things we do, but how do we look at things as well?
Mm,
And so my biggest takeaway, honestly, from my doctorate degree, one was confidence in myself because I could not, you cannot pass that without tapping to yourself and being able to
it's
like
hard work.
verbalize and do the research and do the presentations and it's so uncomfortable. Public speaking is not my thing, but it forces you to do that, right? But
Mhm.
two is learning just how where we have come from in terms of our thought process. And again, I'm gonna throw this out there because this is, if anyone reads my dissertation, like systems theory was a big deal, right? But where did that derive from? Where does that come from? So I spent PTSD, but hours reading original work from, like famous people and trying to break it down and like going back through all this research that was done. And it's silly. Some of it's silly now where you're like, what? Like, why would they think that? Like, why would they do that? And yet, if we didn't have those things, we
Mhm.
wouldn't be effective as therapists now.
Right. Right.
So these theorists and all these things, I think that that's really kind of what helped me. And then just learning that the unfortunate thing in this world is that if we want to make change, you do have to have a name in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely hierarchy things that come with higher education. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're exactly right. That having a doctorate degree is a part of that change. Thanks for answering that question. I know it was kind of random, but
Was it good? Was it even helpful? My
it
speech was, I'm like,
was.
I try so hard to balance my nerdy self with like remembering that not everybody knows what the heck I'm going to be talking about when I talk about these things. So I have to try
Yeah.
to like bring it back down.
Well, and I think that that sometimes can be something I know something I feel of like, oh, these are just concepts that everybody knows because when you spend time at school reading and writing papers and all that kind of thing, you think, oh, it's a language that everybody has. And then sometimes you step back and you're like, oh no, it's something like just talking about anger and like, anger is a response that humans like because it sometimes gives us power and things that we feel like we have none or no control over. And so, I'd be mad at somebody and punch them in the face, like, that gives me something rather than say, like, "Hey, you hurt my feelings when you did this,"
Yeah.
that's sometimes extremely
Yeah.
hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like growing up the way that I did, that we did, right? We have spoken about the ability to see our parents give back. So I think too, of course, going into this degree as a social worker is like, I want to help,
Right.
but how do I help?
I think it's interesting that you bring that up, and I think that is something we wanted to talk a little bit about on this episode, which is I know when I went to school and the question of what I want to be when I grow up, there had to be something about meaning. Like meaning was important to me in terms of choosing a career. And that doesn't discount people that do all kinds of jobs, and we need all of that in our society for sure. But I know for myself, like I wanted something that's feels a higher meaning. And I think sometimes we talk about this with our first responders, like having a calling. And so I think
Yes.
that's a little bit of my experience and Dr. Osborne's Psychology 101 class is just feeling again like, oh, like this would be giving back. This would be meaningful to me. And I feel like I do meet a lot of first responder kiddos that, there is something about giving back in their careers. I think that's why in some ways you see a lot of like firefighting families, like
Yeah.
generational, like 3 generationals. The same with our law enforcement families and things like that too. I think you see that, or, the dad was a state trooper and the kiddo is a dispatcher. Like, you just see, I think, that within families. And
Yes.
and now I'm gonna put you on the spot, like, is there a family system there, that's happening in these first responder families? I don't know if you have an answer to that, but
I mean, absolutely, right? And I'm gonna be transparent. I am always transparent on here. Sometimes, right? Like I feel bad because I feel like I never want. Obviously, our biggest goal here is to we love our first responders, and
absolutely.
also there is some honesty and some truth to that. There can be some very dysfunctional systems within our
Right,
families pertaining to our first responders, right? And so I think that what's interesting about that is I think that there's the pros and cons. I think that there's a family system and family dynamic that happens with first responders that instilling resiliency, which we've talked greatly about within your kids, right? Like is what continues to, even in the midst of sometimes chaos, because every family has the right to chaos,
right.
instilling that resiliency and instilling that if we're a good first responder, right, we know that we're instilling these proper values of
Mhm.
respect and integrity and all these things. And I think that's where that system comes into play because everybody in that household pretty much upholds that,
Yeah,
right? And so then you go into this world when you are a child and that's all you know. I still think that there are moments where I look at other people who didn't grow up in a first responder family and I literally like my brain can't comprehend how their brain
right.
doesn't think the way that I do, like doesn't see it
Mhm.
in different like the ways that I do, but I have to remember that that emotional intelligence isn't there at that extent of because they didn't have to have that because it was instilled in us at a young age to think differently, to think more critically, to be aware of our surroundings, to like and
Right.
so
Pay
that can be
attention.
very different, right? And
Yeah.
so I definitely feel like that family system plays a huge impact into why people will become a first responder, if not in the helping profession. Let's talk about how many of us turn into nurses,
Yes, I knew you
right?
said
Coming,
it. Mhm.
yeah, like coming from a first responders family too, right? And then also just this notion of how do I figure out where I came from? And I think we all do that, whether we're first responder families or not, right? Of
Mhm.
like, if I did go through things in childhood, which we all do, I think one of my stepmom's most famous quotes, honestly, is because she's been a social worker now, she's going on her 29th year of school social work, is like, we are all trying to undo the things our parents did to us to an
Mhm.
extent, right? And so you're always trying to figure that out. And I think that also guides it as well. Like just trying to figure out what life was like and why it was like that way. And you either fall into it in that positive role or sometimes it can be a negative. So,
Well, I appreciate you sharing your experience and the positives of it, and that, there's still that you and your dad are in dialogue and communicating about those things too. Like, oh, like that's a bummer that there was this conflict, but look what came of it, in
yeah.
this like really positive way. And I mean, that's just such a resilient factor for sure.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, right? Like I've obviously very much so immersed myself into this world, and now I can 100% see where it all came from with him, right? Do I 100% agree that it was still the correct approach in life when it comes to parenting? No, but there is no handbook. We've said that 100 times to parenting.
Right, right.
And so when our brains are so just focused in on these aspects of life, in terms of being a first responder and following all these rules and regulations that they do, right? Like it's very hard for them to come home and turn that off and look at their children in a different way.
I would agree with that for sure. And yeah, it can be really hard to navigate that and manage that feedback to say
Oh, I
about
feel like I'm being an epic nerd on this episode where
no,
my
I don't
thoughts are
feel like
just
that
like
at all.
spewing out and I can get very like, how do I put this politically correct? And how do
No.
I,
I mean, I
but
think Ashley, what's great about you is that you just put things the correct way. So
Sure try. I sure try. It's hard to articulate all the time, like where that all stems, but I'm so
I
passionate. And when I get passionate, I get like, I have to
Yeah.
say it all. Like,
I'm an active parent right now, and it is a little bit of like, what will I do today that he'll be talking to his therapist about one day? I mean, you are gonna just fumble through it and make
100%.
mistakes all the way. And the goal though is I hope this is okay to say, and if I'm stepping across the line, please let me know. But like, I mean, clearly you and your dad, like again, mistakes are made as a parent is to come back and say, mistakes were made. And for you as a kid to say, that was still a mistake. I think that's important too. I think when I'm a therapist, at times I have people walk in with, what your stepmom says in terms of like we're just trying to unpack some of the things that happened to us as kiddos and that like wanting to get to that place of like forgiving our parent and they did the best they can. And that's a great place to be, but it
Yeah.
also has to acknowledge like that something was wrong, like a mistake was made.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. I think I'm stumbling my way through what I'm trying to say. I hope that
No, I think that sounds great because there's so much truth to it. And I express this when I do give a presentation. I know I've said that before on what it was like for me to be a child of a first responder, but I express that in there so often. I'm like, it is okay as a parent to say I'm sorry.
Yep,
And though just saying I'm sorry alone, literally sometimes that's all we want to hear,
right,
you
right.
know? And there's a lot of power in that.
Mhm. There
And
really
not to be
is.
afraid. Yeah, right? Like not to be afraid to actually say that as a parent, right? Like
Mhm.
I always say would have probably cleared up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I definitely understand that experience too, for sure. And obviously we've talked a lot about that too, just that like authoritarian, my way or the
Mhm.
highway kind of stuff. And it's just like, oh no, like we're a system, right? Like
Yes.
we all have a role to play here. And, I think we enjoy a bit of a democracy over a dictatorship.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I will say, like, there's still moments where my dad struggles with that. I got he does, right? Like, no,
Hmm.
no, no, it's my way. Like, no, 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 I'm right. Like,
Right.
but he has grown so much in that area. And I don't sometimes I'm like, was that my stepmom? I think a little bit because she doesn't allow him
Right.
to get away with it, right? But she can also talk to him because of her skill set in a way that's helpful for him to
Yeah.
understand it and see it differently. But also, I got to give him credit because there's some truth to like he doesn't have to change, but he has recognized like I don't have to be so hard. Like
Yeah.
I am in retirement. I don't
Yeah.
have to be so hard. I can be more soft and loving and open, and that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I don't know. I think there's also that dynamic of when you're an adult, but you're still your parents' child. Like that's something that can be, maybe this is a different episode, but that place of like, no, like you're not making decisions for me. I make my decisions now, and I want your support in those decisions. Like I'll be really honest about that. And now I can say I understand that like I'm not supported on every decision because maybe that wasn't the best decision for me. But sometimes you have to learn that on your own, right?
yes,
Mm.
everything you're saying right now, I'm like, man, how true, how true. Because again, right, and that's how you know, and I always say this too, your kids love you. They
Mhm.
love you, right, when we're young, and speaks volume that still to this day, I do that. I'll
Right.
seek that validation of wanting to make the right
Oh,
choices
totally.
from him, right? Like from my dad. But there is so much truth to that dynamic shift of like, well, I am there. I'm like the dad, but I'm also now
Yeah.
having to let them make those choices.
Yeah. I had a pretty cool meeting with somebody in Dallas. And, like, I mean, aside from my husband, like, the first person I wanted to share was my dad. So, I mean, I think that there is still
All the
my
time.
40s, and that was important to me. So, I definitely think that there is something to be said for that. And again, like, I I hope, Ashley, our conversation, it's about parenting and kids, but like we're both grown-ups and we still have these relationships with our first responder parents. And I think it's like, how do you make it through the mistakes, and still have a relationship? And because, you and I have talked about this before, this sad situation of first responder parents that are estranged from their children. Like,
Yes.
like you
Yeah.
gotta be able to like work through these things and make it on the other side for sure.
And what would you feel if I shot back at you that maybe some of that comes from those first responder parents showing more vulnerability to their children too?
I definitely think that's part of it. I don't know that that's my dynamic completely.
Yeah.
I think I probably did more of the work than somebody
No,
else.
no, I know. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like,
Yes.
I know
Okay.
that, like,
Excuse me.
now, like, if children of first responders are listening, if you're a parent and you're a first responder listening, like, isn't there so much to be said about just like that vulnerability piece as well of like being vulnerable with your kids?
Yeah.
Knowing that emotions are okay, allowing them to be vulnerable with you rather than shutting it down and saying, "Hey, go rub some dirt on that."
Right, right, right. Oh,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. I misunderstood.
Oh, no,
Absolutely.
you're okay. We're just shooting back and forth right now. So I put you on the spot. That wasn't, and that was literally because my brain was like, of course, goes 100. And I'm like, like speaking of, like, what about vulnerability up in here? Like,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
think
the
that's a
beauty of this.
hard thing to navigate. Like, when is it appropriate to be vulnerable? And then obviously in
Hmm.
first responding careers, like you're taught all the things to not be. So I get it for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like, if children of first responders are listening, which we hope they are, just you're not
Yeah,
alone in all that.
absolutely.
There's so
Absolutely.
many different dynamics. There's so many frustrations. There is looking at other kids and being like, "How come your life is much more flexible than mine?"
Exactly. What do you mean? Like, you got to go to Disney and not an FOP convention for summer vacation. I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. Mine is still, I know I've said this before, but mine is still like, "What do you mean?" Or maybe I haven't said it on here. I'm not sure, but as silly as this is, what do you mean you can call your dad dude and he doesn't get mad at you? Like,
Oh my gosh, I could not like, that's not even in, like, an
girl,
imaginary
exactly.
scenario. Yeah.
In my head, like in the still 32, and in my head, I could see his face. It was one time, one off. I learned a lesson, right? Those eyebrows turned in, and his exact statement was, "I am not your dude." And I was like,
He
"Oh,
is not. He
you
is
do not say that."
he is not.
But then my friends would say it all the time.
Right.
And I would be like, "Ugh, I don't get it. Why
Yeah.
can't I say that?" Like, and it's as little as that when you're a child of a first responder that you pick up on all these different things where you're just
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
and it's normal. And it's normal to be sometimes angry with your parents and their strict rules, but it's also this trust in that as you grow. You
Yeah.
also learn that there was a lot of beauty in the way you grew up as well.
No, and to like bring us back a little bit, I think that's that whole thing about career paths and the resiliency of first responder kids and the choices we make. And I think, we come on and we talk about our mental health backgrounds, and I just thought it was nice for us to maybe talk a little bit of our origin stories in terms of like
Yeah.
how did we get on these paths and didn't become first responders. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I always laugh now because I work with so many and I do so much, so involved, right? That I'm like, I don't have the as odd as this sounds. I have the patience in the world in this office space that I have for therapy. But there is no way in heck you're catching me out there trying to implement the law with some of these folks. Like my patience would be 0 to 100. I would be gone. I would be fired in 2 seconds. I cannot be a first responder. Like I cannot.
Used aggressive force on your first
Girl,
first
they
call.
would be like, "Ma'am, this is not for," I just don't, it's so odd to me, but it's so funny too. Like I watch obviously like On Patrol Live. We love Rizzo, right? Like shout
Mhm.
out to them, all of them on there. And I'm like, like they're not, I don't have the patience for that. We're not doing that. Like I laugh all the time. I'm like, this is exactly why I couldn't become a first responder because interestingly enough, they have all the patience in the world on the street, but maybe that's why they didn't have it when they came home. 'Cause
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think about that with like nursing. Like, I would be the worst nurse. I'm like, I'm sorry you don't feel well. Please go away and come back when you're better. Like,
Yeah,
I
like
have no patience for that. So,
right.
we all have our strengths and our opportunities. That's for sure. That is for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I feel like this episode is a little bit of a wild card, but I love it.
As it always is when it's just you and I and no special guest.
And yeah, but I also love it because I feel like it challenges our listeners.
Yeah.
Still listen, right? Listen and pull something.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the beauty of learning?
Yeah. You can
Like,
edit this out, but I'm like, can we have a special guest, Jennifer, your stepmom, on sometime?
yes.
Okay. No
Yeah.
pressure.
No. I love it.
We've had
No.
2 Ashleys before, so we could definitely have 2 Jennifers. It would be okay.
I mean, absolutely.
Mhm.
It's not my, well, there are a lot of Jennifers in this world.
And there are.
And that is, but that sounds like it's not my fault that my parents named me the most common name in America. But, you know, there are quite a few Jennifers too.
Just a couple. Just a couple.
Well, I think that we do have, we'll just say it out now, that we do have some cool guests, cool, throwing it different guests lined
Uh-huh.
up to come back on. And we still are always open for people to message us, share
Yep,
their stories, want to come on, share our message, and of course, anything they want us to talk about on here.
absolutely. And we just always appreciate our listeners.
Yes, and so never forget that when the call hits home, Jennifer and I are here for you. Thank you.
Have a good one.